Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome back to, well, the final day of our debate winter school this year. Uh, Second annual. Well, we'll see if the years continue on because one of the interesting things about the reasoning in the lines of debate is that you certainly can have a flawless, valid reason to prove the cause of something, meaning the past history, but there's no valid reasoning to prove futures. So we'll see. But from judging from the success and the excitement, enthusiasm of the students here, it's very likely we'll continue having courses like this. But anyway, for now, what we will do during this session is a bit of review because there's been so much material and some more kind of, trying to help everyone here to see, what does it mean to take something like our debate outline with matter and the physical universe and then just pull out the salient philosophical questions and debate them. And so, we have requests to kind of go over the flow of debate, the different kinds of answers and responses you can give, and how a challenger then continues in response to a defender, and how the defender then responds to the challenger's um, tactic or path that they chose. So we can actually demonstrate that a little bit more. And we'll also, the first thing we'll do is actually just have time for some questions and answers because there are most likely some, remaining kind of unanswered qualms or questions or confusion that some of you have. So, and someone asked, okay, well, here's a question already. So why don't we have the coaches and everyone and Joe and come up on stage so we can just take questions now, and we'll spend the first portion of this session just taking questions. So the first question was, Joe, do you want to answer the first question? It says, I wonder,
First
do you see it?
question.
I
Yeah, so the
wonder,
question.
are you thinking of starting a regular course on the Londa debate in near future?
So our hope is, if there is interest, to continue to continue our practices and maybe do twice a week practices. So that's something that we will definitely discuss
In the next session, we'll talk more about
in the next one.
what's coming up. Yeah.
But
Okay,
the short
great.
answer is yes, if you guys want it.
And then any other questions about, well, anything really, but especially about the debate itself or any of the content that you've learned this week? Okay, waiting. Okay, so far not seeing any questions, so maybe we'll just, okay, Ravi Kumar, you have a hand up. You can, if you have a question, you can also just come straight to the stage. But okay. Yes,
Can you hear me?
welcome.
Yeah, I think thank you for this wonderful course, which helps with a lot of exercises and these drills that creates a lot of confusion and clarity. But the questions what I have is with regard to this that during the first day when there was a debate between Joe and Geshe-la, the debate practice went for almost like 40 to 50 phases. But how do one remember that what somebody had said 5 times, the fifth one or the previous eighth one or ninth one? It's so difficult that we don't remember that. So how can can you give some tips and guidance to address this issue? Thank you.
Practice, practice, practice. You're right. It is really, really hard. It's really hard, and it's part of the amazing skill of the great debaters is that they can remember all the things that have been, all the claims that have been made, and they can, they can keep everything straight. Especially when, because who the challenger is and who the defender is fluid as well, right? So keeping in mind that there are new challengers coming in and challengers going out. And sometimes there's even defenders coming in and defenders going out. So you have to keep not only what you've said straight, but you have to keep what all the other people in the role of the defender said straight. And it's really, really hard.
To add to that, it's really hard. And when I was starting out with debate, I like to say that my memory is bad, which is still kind of true, but it's nothing that's I'm born with a bad memory and that's it. It can be changed in basically all of the cases. If you're feeling that it's hard right now, it doesn't need to stay hard. And if you practice a lot, then that thing can get better. And from a scientific or learning perspective, if you've been introduced to debate this week for the first time, then there is a lot of stuff you had to learn, a lot of things to work on, and a lot of things to remember. Now you have to focus a lot on the structure, but when you're more experienced, if you practice a lot debate, then it's easy for you to stick to the formalism, and you can spend more of your mental resources on, for example, remembering what went 2 or 3 minutes before. So those things naturally come easier when you can focus on other things to learn.
Yes. Yes, and every skill that is involved will get better with time. Yeah, practice. Okay, good question. Very good question. Any more questions? Okay.
I'm sorry if that's not the answer that, if you're hoping for like a magic kind of magic trick or something, it may not be a fulfilling answer, but that's, yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm not seeing questions, so we can move into then a little bit of demonstration and kind of doing more what traditionally is done when teaching and learning debate, which is to go through a text and then to just kind of be, pointing out as you read through a text the various kind of possible inconsistencies, places where a debate easily ensues. And so we can kind of show how that can work and then actually take one of those questions and debate it. So that way everyone can see again another example of what this flow of debate looks like. And then we'll also kind of try and throw in some other points to review that have come up over the past few days and show you again just demonstrating a little bit how they might work. And so, okay, great. So then Venerable Doma and I will take a look. So let's remember we have this debate outline, and I'll just do the screen share so everyone can be reminded of what it looks like. Okay, looks like this. Understanding matter and the physical universe. This is the longer version, the extended version. Okay, so here we have some definitions, we have some divisions, we have more definitions and more divisions. That's the outline, right? And in general, the actual debate texts that are traditionally used are written in a slightly different format because before giving just the definitions and divisions that are accepted by the author of the text or the tradition of the class, there's a section of refuting other theories or other authors' perspectives or other schools' perspectives. So that's actually really cool because then you have this whole kind of section of taking on you take on the perspective of people who have different beliefs or different views about such and such topic, and you negate that, you refute that. So you first see, okay, so what are the holes in this other theory, this other view? And that's where the actual debate starts. So we didn't we don't have that for this particular course, but maybe we could create some kinds of debates like that for the future. But anyway, so starting here, so we can just go through and say, so we have a definition of matter as something that is established as particle-like or composed of particles. So now, what do you do, right? So, first of all, we can, like, if it was just in a class setting, an instructor is going to sort of just tease out some of the, possible doubts that come when you get a definition like this. So what's a possible doubt that could come up? Well, I mean, several of you have been raising them over the week. So why don't we have from the students, if you can, answer within like 30 seconds, if someone has one that comes to mind and come up quickly and say it, then we'll go with that one. Otherwise, we'll create our own. Anyone have anyone? I'm starting the timer at 30 seconds. So if you wanna contribute, you come quickly. And a doubt meaning, so what does it have to be true for, this to be a good definition of matter, for it to be the, really what, to define matter? There has to be a relationship of equivalence, right? So that has to have the 8 doors of pervasion between matter and something that is established as particle-like or composed of particles. So does anything come to mind? Or okay, well, let's see. There's no doubts, meaning like if you could think of a subject that maybe is one but not the other, right? Something like that. That's the kind of answer that would be appropriate here. Yes, good. We have a suggestion. Thank you. So we can say a thought of an electron, right? Okay, cool. Well, we might as well run with that. So, um, so so that's right, right? So we say, wait, is there really a relationship of equivalence here? So Venerable Doma. So this is just the easiest way to start, right? It follows you can posit the best way to start, the absolute 100 perfect way to start. Then we say, so Venerable Doma, it follows you can posit the difference between matter and something that is established as particle-like or composed of particles in terms of 3 joints, 4 joints, equivalence, or contradiction. So now you see what's happening is, thank you, I accept, thank you. So what we do is the very beginning, the first question in the debate is, can you posit the difference in joints, right? So you have them posit the joints. That immediately allows you to start debating something. You've already got a big question there. What's the question? Well, wait a minute. Are there things which are both of those? Is there something which is matter but not the other one? Is there something that's established as particle-like but not matter? Yeah. So you've already got this kind of, it gets your mind working to start questioning, is that does that definition really fit for matter or not? And you have to start thinking of examples. So Venerable Droma, if you accept, then please posit what the difference is.
They're equivalent.
They're equivalent, and they're equivalent because
Whatever is matter is necessarily that which is established as composed as particles or particle-like, and whatever is that which is established as particle-like or composed of particles is necessarily matter. And the rest of the 8 doors.
And the rest of the 8, right? So there's a condensed way, right? And the rest of the 8 doors of pervasion without having to list every one of them, because that's already understood, right? So we can go on our kind of shared understood knowledge. And just as a note, the definitions here are sort of expanded from the sort of they're expanded from the kind of pithy Tibetan ones. So it's fine if we expand them back. I mean, sorry, if we condense them back. So if you just say, something established as particle-like, or even just, something particle-like, you can give a sort of condensed definition. So that way, you're not spending so much time saying this, like, whole, paragraph every time you say a definition. Okay. So here we have a thought, so a conceptual cognition of a form, a thought of an electron is particle-like. So this is exactly what happens. You have a doubt, and then you start to say, wait a minute, I have an example of something which is matter but is not. Well, so I'm not sure what Mercurio's example, if you're saying that that is matter but not particle-like, or if you're saying it's particle-like but not matter. But Shmuel's example, he says specifically it's particle-like, and I'm guessing, he's the other end of that is that it's not matter, right? A thought of an electron, he's asserting to be particle-like, but not matter. Okay, and we're just going to use the definition particle-like from now on for the sake of convenience, but understand it refers to that longer definition. Okay, so Venerable Doma, you're saying that I'll double check, right? Double checking is really important, because then we're all staying on the same page. So what did you say? It follows that if something is matter, it's necessarily particle-like?
I accept.
It follows if something is particle-like, it's necessarily matter?
I accept.
Ooh, well, you're in for a treat, because I have something that's going to spin your wheels. Okay, take the subject, the thought, the thought of an electron. It follows that. So now what you can do is, again, you can already start with, there's so many avenues, right? You can just start with an absurd consequence of of what she's accepted. Now, this is, I'm going to just go on the basis of, the kind of Buddhist psychology theory, which is that consciousness and matter are contradictory, right? Thoughts and matter are contradictory. So I'll just take that as an assumed, again, shared knowledge. Okay, so Venerable Doma, take the subject, a thought of an electron. It follows it is not a thought.
Why?
It follows that it's so her answer was why, right? So now I'm going to, so there's options here, right? The flow of debate, right? Why don't we take out the sheet, actually? Wouldn't that be easier so everyone can just watch what we're doing? I'm sorry, I didn't think to do that initially. So we have two sheets actually that have like a flow. There's the actual, there's one that gives like a diagram, and then there's an actual flow chart, which is a little more complex, but really helpful if you take the time to study it. And both are really helpful. So I'm just gonna run and pop those open. Pardon me for taking some time here. I should have had those open already. Okay. Nalanda debate flowchart. So that's the one that has kind of the more, intricate kind of the connections between the different responses. And then the answer summary, debate answer summary diagram. So this one, they're both helpful. And so we will pop that up and screen share it for everyone to see. Right. So where are we going? So actually from now on, I'll just keep this screen share up, and so we can kind of point out where are we going when we do this. Okay, so what did we have? A thesis, starting up here, right? And we had a why. So I could give an opposite thesis, or I can give a reason. Now I'm just going to go straight forward and give a reason, because I have something in mind already. I'm trying to go somewhere here. I have a reason in mind. If you don't have a reason in mind, or you want to pursue, just you want to check the opposite thesis, that's fine. But for now, we're going to give a reason. And again, looking at the other chart, the flow chart. So where would we go? Start of debate, statement, response. Okay, so that's just the general. But here we have subject, predicate, why. So we have two places to go again. We could either do the opposite, which means negate the predicate, or we can go down to subject, predicate, and then reason, a three-part syllogism with a reason. So Venerable Doma, so let's remember, right? I could even say, restate, here it's not a reason, but just restate the why, right? Restate what you denied. Can you restate what you...
That a thought of an electron is
a thought.
that which is composed of particles.
No, it just is a thought. I said
sorry, yeah,
the first question was the thought of an electron, and it follows as a thought. That was why. So okay, so take the subject. So right, it's hard to remember even for us who are experienced. It is, don't worry, we're all on the same page. Okay, take the subject, the thought of an electron. It follows that it is not a thought because it is not consciousness.
Why?
Okay,
Oh,
great.
sorry, reason not established.
Reason not. So
Reason
now
not
there was a
established.
reason. So again, looking at the diagram, we had a reason, and Venerable Droma has three options here. She could just say, "Oh gosh, he got me. I accept." She can say reason not established, meaning that in this case, a thought of an electron not being consciousness is not established, meaning she says it is consciousness. Or she could say no pervasion. If something is not consciousness, it is not necessarily the
Not
case
the thought.
that it's not a thought. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So I know that's the knots. It gets confusing. That's another thing that just through practice, you're going to have to kind of just, bolt through it and it gets clearer. So take this. So now I'm going to just keep trying to give more reason. So now she said reason not established. So now we have this kind of feedback loop, right? So now we can either start, right? We can either negate the reason and just reverse it and say, okay, you don't accept the reason, then you must accept the opposite of the reason, right? Just do the opposite. Or we can go back to the top and say subject, predicate, and then again, we're assuming she's going to say why. So we go straight down now to a reason, right? So here you could go straight down to the reason too. So I hope that's clear the way this flowchart works. And now going back to the other one, because it's a little less complex. But so we had a reason not established, reason not true. And now we're going to, again, confirm. That means I'll ask her to restate the reason that she denied. And then a new thesis, here, that means I'll be taking the reason she denied as my thesis and using another reason to try to prove it. So in Odoma, I know I just said a lot, so maybe that makes it harder to remember, but if you could restate the reason, restate the reason that you denied. So I said, take the subject, a thought of an electron, it follows it is not a thought because it is not consciousness.
Because it's not reason. Yeah, reason not true.
Reason not true, so restate the reason. So now you have to do is a double negative here, right?
Yeah,
Of an electron. A thought of an restate the yeah. I mean, this is like the language. I know sometimes it just means thought Lindsay, right? So the I mean, we actually, to be quite frank, don't do that in the school where we both studied, or where Venerable Droma still is. They don't actually do it that much there, where you say restate the reason. But some schools do it, some monasteries do it. So, but that really just means you would say this, thought of an electron is not consciousness. You would just kind of restate what you had just denied there. Thought of an electron is not consciousness.
Okay, a thought of electron is not consciousness.
Not consciousness? Okay, great. Well, I will again prove you wrong. Take the subject, the thought of an electron. So now jumped right back up. Boom. All the way down here. Subject, predicate, reason. Take the subject, the thought of an electron. It follows it is not consciousness, predicate, because it is matter. Damn.
Reason not true.
Reason not true. Take the subject. I'm sorry, not matter. Oh, that's not what I meant to say. No, it is. Take the subject, the thought of an electron. Right, that is what I want to say, because it is matter. It follows that. So now she said reason not true. So this time I'll repeat it. Take the subject, the thought of an electron. It follows that it is not matter.
I accept.
Okay, so this time what did I do? I gave a reason. She said reason is not established, not true. And then that's another, by the way, another way of saying reason not true. And then the next one is negate the reason. So that's what I just did. I just restated I put the opposite of the reason as a new thesis. And so now she accepted it. So where are we again? Take the subject, the thought of an electron. It follows it is not matter.
I accept.
You accept. So I'm going to now try to give another reason to prove it is matter. Take the subject, the thought of an electron. It follows it is matter because it is particle-like.
Reason not true.
Reason not true. Okay. So now restate the reason. The negated reason. The thought of an electron.
The thought of a particle, the thought of an electron is not particle-like, right?
Right, that's exactly right. The thought of an electron is not particle-like. So that's how you restate the reason in this case. And then, sorry, oh, huh, I'm sorry. Ah, I see. Interesting. That was my mistake. Okay, so I didn't have the diagram I'm showing enlarged for people to see it on the YouTube stream. So okay, I just did that. Sorry for the break. Okay, so now is where logic kind of gets tricky, right? Because I have some idea in mind, but I have to try to phrase it in a way where it's going to actually, raise some real doubt for Venerable Doma. She doesn't seem to have much doubt about this right now. So, but Shmuel had something in mind when he suggested, right, the thought of an electron as being, the thing that disproves that particle-like is the definition of matter, right? So why I'm guessing he's thinking that, well, a thought of an electron is like an electron, it's particle-like, but it's consciousness, it's a thought, it's not matter. So you can have something which is particle-like but not matter. So how am I going to prove that? Is I'll just try and, right? Take the subject, the thought of an electron. It follows that it is particle-like because it is the image of a particle.
No pervasion.
No pervasion.
Oh
Okay.
no, reason not true.
Or it's endowed with the image of a particle, I should say. It's
Oh,
nampa dentampa. I don't even know how to say this phrase in English, to be quite frank, but
exactly. It's
it's a
tricky.
very clear phrase in Tibetan. It
It
is
has the aspect.
it has the, yeah, there you go. It has the aspect of a particle. Thank
No pervasion.
you. No pervasion. Okay, now restate the pervasion. If something
If something has the aspect of being if something has the aspect of particle-like, it's not necessarily particle-like.
if something has the aspect of a particle, it's not necessarily particle-like, right?
Yes.
Okay, so take the subject, right? The the aspect of a blue mug, right? Is that blue? It's like purple or something. I don't know. Take the subject, the aspect of a blue mug, right? It follows that. So now what did I do is I just threw out that whole, line of subject predicate reasons, but the new one I'm picking is related. So here again, she said no pervasion. So I said, okay, so now I'm going back to the start. I'm determining a subject predicate and a subject and predicate, and this time it's a different one. So I'm not keeping the same one. The first whole line of reasons was all the same subject, right? Now I'm taking a new subject. Take the subject, the aspect of a blue cup. It follows it is not like a blue cup. Blue mug.
Why?
Why? Take this. So now she's whying. So I'm either going to give a reason, or I'm going to negate it, right? So I'll negate it and check. So take the subject, the take the subject, the aspect of a blue mug. It follows that it is like a blue mug.
I accept.
Good. So now you do a pervasion. So it follows that if something, right, is the aspect of a mug, it's necessarily like a mug.
I accept.
If something is a phenomenon, right, an object, an existent thing, all those are equivalent. If something is an existent thing, then it follows that if something is an existent thing, its aspect is necessarily like it.
I accept.
Good. Take the subject of an electron, it follows that its aspect is like it.
I accept.
Take the subject a particle, it follows that its aspect is like it.
I accept.
Take the subject a particle, it follows that its aspect is particle-like.
I accept.
Take the subject, the aspect of a particle. So we're sort of just like, putting little pieces of this subject together by, coming from the pervasion and going step by step. So first the pervasion was all existent things, all phenomena. Are there aspects like them? Yes. Okay, so now go one by one. An electron, a particle, right? So we have to try and go slow here. Take the subject, an electron, take the subject, the aspect of an electron, it follows its particle-like.
Take the subject, the aspect of an electron, it follows its particle-like.
Yes.
The aspect of an electron, it follows its particle-like. I accept.
Mm-hmm. So take the subject, the thought of an electron, it follows that it's particle-like.
Why?
Because it is endowed with particle-likeness.
No pervasion.
No pervasion. Okay, so here again we have no pervasion. So I'll restate the pervasion. It follows that something is endowed with particle likeness. It is not necessarily particle like.
I accept.
Okay, cool. So that's how you could have a debate. Thank you so much, Venerable Domo. That was you defended well. You in the end I thought I had a good reason that would totally flip you on your heels and make you go, I was wrong, but you actually just said no pervasion. So that's that's always a little tough because then you kind of as a challenger have a that's a difficult one to recover from. So you just get a no pervasion. Okay, so without taking more time, so I'm sorry I didn't really incorporate as many of the other things that I was hoping to review here, but we at least got a chance to look at this chart and kind of go through that flow of debate a little bit, and the two charts together. And again, one of them's a little more complex, but they're both extremely valuable. And I should say, right, that phrasing of reason not established was like, it just wasn't changed to reason not true, but they're both fine to say. Okay. So now what else shall we do? What's on our schedule? Okay. Oh, yes. So now it's Joe's. Yes. Now we have time for Joe to give a little bit of discussion about the syllogism. Okay. Please go on, Joe.
Great. Thank you so much, Doniola. First, I want to answer a question that was given by Chad. I hope that's pronunciation is right. She said, "Could you maybe share with us what was most important for yourself in learning debate?" And I had time to have a little think about that. And I think the most important thing for me was finding the joy in being wrong, finding the joy in having someone show you that you're wrong about something or that you've contradicted yourself, that you have faulty logic. Because that, if you don't like that, then debate is just going to be an uphill battle. Because as we've seen, like all of us, doesn't matter how great you are, I promise you, all of these great debaters, they have all made mistakes as they have been learning, and that's just part of it. And if you can sort of, rather than like be afraid of that, if you can just embrace that and be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna make a mistake, I'm gonna say something stupid, doesn't matter, I'm just gonna throw myself into it and let the process happen, then it's a much more enjoyable experience, and I think you learn more. So that would be my answer to that. Now, the next thing that we're doing, we're going to give you one more new nugget of information. But before you freak out, please keep in mind that this is something that we've implicitly done before. but I just want to go over this explicitly because we have talked about the Buddhist syllogism before, and we've referred to the Buddhist syllogism, but we haven't actually said exactly what it is. So I don't want you guys to go away and think that, you know, the subject and the predicate and the reason is itself the Buddhist syllogism. Because in fact, what the Buddhist syllogism is certain connections between those things. So let's have a little look at what the Buddhist syllogism is. I'm not going to take too much time. Let's do that. So bear with me. If your head is just so full of knowledge and you're just about to explode, then, you know, I'm sorry, but this is important. Okay. So the Buddhist syllogism, the three-limbed reasoning process. Sanskrit, Triribhya, Tibetan, Sulsum. So the syllogism is, Buddhist reasoning is formulated around a threefold reasoning process called the Triribhya in Sanskrit, Sulsum in Tibetan. There are many different names for it in English. Here we're calling it a syllogism, but, and I cannot emphasize this enough, we are calling it a syllogism, and many people call it the Buddhist syllogism, but I want you to know it's not actually a syllogism. So we have been lying to you this whole time. Ha 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 ha. But for ease sake, because, you know, we have to translate it as something, we're calling it a syllogism. So please keep in mind that anybody who studied like any kind of Western logic before or Greek philosophy may be aware of the Greek syllogism, and it is not that. You can reformulate it as a Greek syllogism, that's possible, but does it change the meaning? I have argued in some of my work that it does change the meaning, and it's actually doing something quite different than the Greek syllogism. Without going into all that, I'm happy to discuss that in another forum, in another time, if anyone's interested in that, because what most of my research is about comparative logics and how these things are different and how you can compare them and how you can't compare them. But that's not what we're doing here, right? So the syllogism, let's skip over the next one. Let's go right down to the last one. At the bottom of the page, the last point. If you are responding in debate, if you guys are at the stage where you're already like giving answers, then you are implicitly using this syllogism. You may not know that you are, but you already are. So this was kind of our sort of strategy to kind of get you using it and then go back and say, oh, look, this is what you were doing. Right. So it comes from the 5th, 6th century Indian Buddhist master Dignaga. Before that, there was a fivefold reasoning process from the Nyaya, another like a non-Buddhist school. But the threefold version became popular from Dignaga onwards and was used by Buddhists and non-Buddhists. Even though it's from the Pramana school, the kind of epistemological logical school, it is used by other doctrinal schools. So anyone that's studying Madhyamika or middle way philosophy, you might have come across this in the other texts. But I would suggest that the way that the Madhyamikans use this is in a very different way and for a very different purpose. But that's another very interesting philosophical debate, an issue that we will not be going into here because that's not what we're doing. There is much debate over the exact meaning and the intention of the syllogism and how it changed over time, but I'm just going to give you a really basic overview, hopefully of the stuff that everybody accepts, because within the different schools and the different, the academics and everybody's disagreeing about these things, but hopefully this will give you something that at least most people agree on. Okay, well, so we looked at this before. We looked at the subject, the predicate, and the reason. And we will see, we also looked at the subject and the predicate as the thesis. And we will see that the Buddhist syllogism is actually about the connections between these elements. I'm about to show you 3 different links, 3 different connections between the subject, predicate, and the reason. And if you can establish all 3 of these, then you have yourself an instance of valid reasoning according to this school of thought. But keep in mind, I put a little star here because I want you to know that if you can ascertain all of these 3 connections, then you have yourself an instance of valid reasoning, except for when you don't. So there are other there are exceptions to this rule. There are other requirements that kind of usually get entailed in the first limb. Right, great. So what are the 3 limbs? I've called them establishing the reason, forward pervasion, and reverse negative pervasion. You can just call them limb 1, limb 2, and limb 3. Sometimes they're called like the 3 marks or the 3 modes. They've got lots of different names, but let's have a look at what they actually are. So the first one is the connection between the subject and the reason. So this means the subject is the reason. For example, sound is a product. And we saw before that if you cannot make a connection, if you cannot say that the subject is the reason, we saw before that the answer that one gives to the reason is reason not true. So if the first limb is not confirmed, if the first limb does not hold, that's when you say reason not true. We also implicitly looked at the second limb, which is the pervasion, the positive pervasion limb. And this is the limb that requires, if the reason, then necessarily the predicate. If something is a product, then necessarily it is impermanent. And we looked at this before in the context of when we say no pervasion, what it means is that this thing is not true. This second limb is not true. So if the first limb doesn't work, we say reason not true. If the second limb doesn't work, we say no pervasion. Great. So let me just check in with you guys. How are we looking so far? Does this make sense? Okay, excellent. A few people with hands up. If not, again, this is stuff that we can go over again and again until we get it. Okay. So now we're going to look at one that is a little bit trickier. Now we're going to push the bar. This is the third limb, and this I've called reverse negative pervasion. So in this limb, we say, if not the predicate, then necessarily not the reason. If not the predicate, then necessarily not the reason. So I know how much you guys love introducing nots into the language. But here it's kind of unavoidable. So for example, if your claim is, take the subject, what was the subject? I think it was a flower. Take the subject flower, whatever the subject was. Take the subject flower, it follows it is impermanent because it is a product. Then the third limb would say that if something is not impermanent, it is necessarily not a product. So the first limb goes from 1 to 3, the second limb goes from 3 to 2, and the third limb goes from not 2 to not 3. So let me ask you guys a quick question. Reflection. Do you think that not impermanent and permanent are equivalent? So who thinks that not impermanent and permanent are equivalent? A couple of people. Okay. If you accept that, that's going to make it easier because then you can say, if permanent, then necessarily not the product. And that's a little bit easier for us to think about instead of having all these, negations. Okay. So the next thing that I want you guys to have a little think about, and this is not something you necessarily have to answer here, but have a little think about whether you think the second limb, which is if the reason, then the predicate, it has the same meaning or covers the same ground or is equivalent to, if not the predicate, then necessarily not the reason. Have a think about that. So I think we've already covered this, but please feel free to look over these slides later on. There are also other sort of particular requirements for a syllogism to be, a so-called syllogism to be considered valid. But again, we don't have a lot of time, so I won't go into that. And then other requirements. So the next thing that I want to look at is this. This is our 3 limbs template. So if you get a bit confused about the limbs, this should have all of the limbs together in one place. So take the subject, a flower. It follows it is impermanent because it is a product. The first limb is a flower is a product. No, it's not letting me highlight. The first limb is a flower is a product, which is this one here. The second limb is if something is a product, it is necessarily impermanent, which is this limb here. And the third limb is if something is not impermanent, it is necessarily not a product. Or we might be able to say if something is permanent, it is necessarily not a product. So that is a brief whirlwind tour of what is technically the 3 limbs of the Buddhist syllogism. So keep in mind that when you are agreeing to a reasoning, when you're agreeing to a subject, a predicate, and a reason, what you're really agreeing to is that you have all of these 3 limbs. You have 1 to 3, 3 to 2, not 2 to not 3. Right. Great. So that is all that I would like to say on the matter. Doniola, should we take questions or should we plow on to the next stage?
Yes, we should probably take questions if there are any, because that we didn't get that many already, so we have plenty of time for questions still.
Sure. I just want to say somebody said day 5.1 sheet is not posted in the announcement. That will be posted.
It just was. They were just posted during the talk. Yeah. Excellent. So there should be 3 documents in total for day 5. If you don't see all 3 documents, then please write another note.
Okay. And I apologize. That was because I was quite ill yesterday, and so that was my tardiness for not having them in on time. So I'm sorry if I bombarded you with this stuff without you guys being able to have a look at it first, but
you can look at it after. Don't worry.
Look at it after. Plenty of time.
So there do seem to be hands up. So
great.
Why don't maybe we can call. Does Andreas have a question? You can come and ask your question.
Appreciate all of the work you're putting into these sessions, learning a lot. From your slide deck and going through the 3 limbs, I'm not quite sure whether we can see. So there's 2 parts to this question. When we went through your, I don't know what to call it, the wording that you used, it's not evident if you're actually using a reason, because you went from a thesis to, as far as I understood, you went from a thesis to determining pervasion.
Right. So
And then the second part of the question is, you used the word is or has, you didn't use the word it follows. So I was under the impression that we were supposed to use the words it follows.
right.
Not sure if I'm right.
Great. Yeah. Good questions. So let's look at that. The first one, the first of those questions. So we said take the subject. The example was take the subject flower. It follows it is impermanent because it is a product. So within that, what is the reason?
I'm just going to pull up your sheet. So you said a flower is a product.
Mm-hmm. A flower
So I
is
guess
impermanent because it is a product.
okay, that's okay. I was looking at the template and that's not what it said.
Okay, so the first limb, yeah. So altogether, altogether we've got the subject, the predicate, and the reason. But in order to determine if this as a whole is legitimate or not, if it's valid or not, the first thing we ask is the subject the reason? So for the first limb, you forget about the predicate for the first limb. Ignore the predicate for the first limb. That's why in this little diagram, that's why the one that is in gray is the one that you don't have to worry about.
Okay, so what you're saying is the syllogism on this template, the syllogism isn't actually stated. The syllogism would, okay, the table is the syllogism. Sorry, I didn't get that.
So the syllogism is really the links between these three building blocks.
Okay.
Can I just comment? Can you see the screen share? I tried to put this up on the screen so everyone can look at it, but I'm not sure if you have access. You can see it. Okay, great.
So okay, so the table is the subject predicate reason. I would state take the subject a flower, it is impermanent because it is a product.
Yeah.
And from there, the next three statements are not actually statements that are said out loud. They are basically just things that I would check in my mind.
Exactly. Yeah.
With the caveat that there's other slightly different formulations that would explicitly state the pervasion, for instance, but we will not go into that now. that are found in the logic text, but not used in debate, right? That are just sort of theoretical. And then for the second question too, that was discussed yesterday. So if you have those the slides from the, was that yesterday or 2 days ago already? I honestly don't remember, but I think it was yesterday. But there was a discussion about how there's different kind. I mean, we didn't really talk about it in the session because we didn't have time, but if you look at it, it talks about how there are two different kinds of logical statements or different kinds of syllogisms. So there's a straightforward syllogism and a consequential syllogism. So the one we actually use when we're debating is the consequential syllogism. And why don't I just bring that slide up really quickly, because that way you would get what I'm talking about more easily. So one moment,
I
please.
remember that session, that was your session.
Yeah, but that's because your question was, why is there the wording of it is instead of it follows? And that's talked about in that slide, in one of the slides there. So I'll just bring it up really quick. So
if I look at that slide that Joe had, the wording that would be expressed would be it follows. And then in my head, I would check is A in the first limb, and then check the pervasion in the second and third limb.
well, the wording in what Joe presented is not it follows, it's just it is, but that's more like the theoretical structure of the syllogism that we don't use when we're debating. When we're debating, we always say it follows, it follows, it follows.
Okay.
But you're right. What the check is exactly the same.
Thank you.
So I see that Andreas has a question. In your three limbs, it is not very evident that there is a reason.
That was his question.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes.
Does Aussie Jen have a question? I'm not sure the order of when people put their hands up, because I think it just shows the order of the, going in alphabetical order on the the little bubbles there.
So if anyone wants to
Jen?
come up to the stage, please.
Yeah, anyone come. Yeah, we have a couple of hands. Is Jan or Venerable Peldrin, do you have questions? Okay, if not, then we can move on to some things to review. Okay, so we are going to move on to some other things to review for a little while. So one thing, Shanti ji. Okay, Shanti is posted. Yes. Oh, good question. You want to take it, Joe?
Anything that can be proved by the consequentialist reasoning can also be proved by the straight is-type autonomous syllogism. This is a really good question.
Basically, yes, I would think, but maybe that's a question we could actually debate. Is there a pervasion? It follows if something is provable by a consequentialist syllogism, then is necessarily provable by a straightforward syllogism.
Why? I mean, I'm actually not. I'm not sure about this.
Posit an example.
Really...
Right, posit an example. What would be something? Now remember, I mean, let's just get like for those who have a little bit of Buddhist background, you may have heard this before, that existent thing, phenomenon, object of knowledge, object of comprehension, whatever, all-inclusive class of phenomena you want to state it as, because those are all equivalent things. So the way it's normally phrased is, in an object of comprehension. So if something is an object of comprehension, then it's necessarily an object of, or something is an existent thing, it's necessarily an object of comprehension of an inferential reliable cognizer. And inferential reliable cognizers arise from a flawless reason that's posited in a syllogism, right? So that includes all phenomena, right? All phenomena are realized by inferential reliable cognizers. So that means that there's nothing that even exists, much less a thesis, which is not realized by a reliable cognizer. Therefore, it must also be provable by the reasoning of a syllogism. That's sort of the standard take on that. But if you could think of something that would be interesting, that would be provable by a consequence, but not by a straightforward syllogism, it would be a good debate.
I will think about. I'll have a think about that, and I will get back to you because it's a really good question, and I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, the texts are clear on it, but it's good to debate it. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Perhaps we could move on to talking about the materials and the book recommendations.
Well, let's do a little review and
Review first. Okay.
Well, either way.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So here we will. Stefan, do you want to help us review the joints of reasoning a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, so
do that.
Can I just get a show of hands before we go through it again? How many of you feel like, so we just had the joints of reasoning yesterday, and as I pointed out at the beginning of this lecture, this session, it's really quite a very powerful and useful way to just start off any debate, to just jump right at it by asking for what are the joints, what's the difference in terms of the joints between A and B. So how many of you, with a show of hands, feel like you could, if I ask you, okay, what are the different possibilities or options of when you're positing the difference in joints? How many of you feel like you can explain them, or at least list them? At least list them. I'm not going to say what they are. Just get a show of hands. Yay! A lot of people. Good. And again, what was that? That was then 3 joints, 4 joints, equivalence, or contradiction, right? Okay, so those are the ones that as you would list them. Now, how many of you, if you put your hands back down and then raise them again in a moment when I ask the second question, how many of you are confident that you could, take 2 things and somewhat accurately posit what the difference in joints is between them? So let me just say, we'll give examples. I'll take the subject. Let's say an object that can hold water, and an object that can hold water, and an object made from glass. Okay, so how many of you feel like you can posit the difference in terms of joints between those two? An object made from glass and an object that can hold water. Okay, a lot of you. Good. And so what would you say is the difference there? Let me just someone just type it. 4 joints. Rahul got it right. Great. Rahul, good job. Okay, 4 joints. And so what are those joints again? There's something which is both, right? Like a drinking glass made of glass. Something which is something that can hold water but not made of glass, like this mug. That's a ceramic mug. I don't think, yeah, ceramic's not glass, right? It's clay. Okay. And then something which is made of glass, but it is not able to hold water, like a mirror. Although that could possibly be argued because a drop of water could adhere to it. But anyway, that's where you debate. Something that is neither the sky. Okay. Okay, so Stefan has another visual representation for how we can go through these joints. So we'll just, do you want to just take it, Stefan, and do the screen share and everything?
Yeah, sure. Let me get screen share ready. 1 second. So there we go. Okay, now people should be able to see my screen. And I should have a canvas here. Yeah, that's working out. So I was mentioning this yesterday, and I thought it might be nice for other people to also see. In one of the worksheets, we had those diagrams here where you had circles that are overlapping, and a different way to approach this is saying you have 2 concepts. For example, just taking the example from yesterday, humans and mammals, and you can draw 2 circles. Computer, let me draw 2 circles. There we go. So we're drawing 2 circles. Tech is uncooperative today. Sorry. We're drawing 2 circles and big circle, and we call one circle the human circle and one circle the mammal circle. We want to explore those 2 combinations. We have those 2 categories, and we want to see whether they are mutually exclusive, inclusive, have 3 joints or 4 joints. So we try to find examples for the different combinations of those categories. So can we have something that is human and is also a mammal, and something that is neither, and things like this. So we can do this together. Can somebody imagine something that is a human and a mammal? Something that falls in the category of being a human and something that is also a mammal. Please post it right away in the chat if you can think of something. a human being, I would say is basically the same thing as a human. So I would rather go with a man. That a man is an example for something that is human and a mammal. So that would fall into here. I'm saying M for man. And there was the example kangaroo. Thank you for the examples. A kangaroo would fall into the category of being a mammal, but not a human. So that would go into this circle here. Then we can try to think of something that is neither a mammal nor a human, which I think a lot of things fall into that category. Let's say a chair. Perfect. So something that is not a human and not a mammal is a chair, for example. Can we find something that is human but not a mammal? So something that falls into this white category. Right. We don't have anything that would go in here, so we can ignore this area. And if we now compare what we end up with, we considered all the different areas here that are white and delineated with black lines. We have 4 areas of those, and one doesn't work out. So we can say we have 3 joints here, and this diagram we were just drawing is equivalent to the diagram we have with the 3 joints here. We have this small area being included in this bigger area, and we have examples that don't fall into the mammal category. And the same would work out for all the other options. I don't want to stretch this out too much, but I think you get the idea. If you would find something, for example, if you would find examples for something that is a mammal and not a human, and something that is a human but not a mammal, you would end up with mutually exclusive category, for example. And this would be now a way to maybe think of how 2 different categories can be compared with each other, and how to end up with the distinctions between mutually exclusive, inclusive, 3, 4 possibilities, 3 or 4 joints. Yeah, that's basically it. Well, I hope that was helpful. Those diagrams are pretty
Great.
common in a Western tradition of logic, and it's called Venn diagrams or Euler diagrams.
So it's cool because, right, for people who are visually oriented or used to that kind of visual representations for categories and logic, then that's really nice, because what you do essentially is you're taking the sort of, the diagram that we would use for something with 4 joints, but starting, instead of just concluding already how many joints there are and writing the diagram, you start with the overlapping circles, and then you try to find examples of each, and you end up with the sort of, the resulting circles. So if it had 4 joints, then there would be no red there, and it would just look like the 2 circles overlapping. Oh, cool. So that was very, very helpful. So thank you, Stefan. And now,
I'd just like to point out Mikirio pointed out in the chat that a kangaroo is actually a marsupial rather than a mammal. So just in defense of the Australians, marsupials are mammals, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway,
marsupials are mammals.
I hope that the point is taken, irrespective of the facts of the matter, which are now to be negotiated and debated.
Yeah. Now we need to call in a zoologist, and we have to fix our diagram somehow. But we'll see what the zoologist has to say. I don't know.
But as long as the meaning is clear, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, so maybe we can again just in general see if there are any questions about anything. So if you have a question, please come and ask it. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about some of some questions that came up regarding the course materials, as well as the what was the other point you wanted to bring up there? Course materials and book recommendations. Do you want to start talking about that, Joe? So this is sort of like, in reference to questions that came up over the course of the week about the materials that we've posted and been using in the course, as well as just in general where to go to learn more, right? What other resources are available.
Right. So a few people asked if they would be able to use the materials, the drills, and the slides and things that we have made. And the answer is yes, you're most welcome to use them. But with a couple of qualifications. Most of them have, Debate Winter School 2020 on them. So, keep that attribution. And also, please don't make money off them. Please don't sell them for the big bucks, because I'm sure, they're so valuable. And also, please note that if there are any accreditations of the images, because we've used a lot of images from the internet, and according to the rules we've made sure that they are accredited to the right sources. So please keep those accreditations, and then please use them as you see fit.
And it's good to keep the accreditation of this Debate Winter School, just, really so that everyone's aware, because the language might be different from other sources and other schools. So just so everyone knows, okay, that's that particular phrasing or language from that school. So you don't, confuse everything. And so you can kind of have that overall structure in mind if you want to use these materials in other contexts. And then, do you want to say anything about other, further suggested reading or other materials in general?
Right. Well, I mean, I would suggest starting off in the reading room and having a look through those sources to see what interests you. It really depends on what exactly you're interested in.
Yeah.
Whether it's debate or pramana or what interests you. But maybe if there are particular questions about that, then you can post them in the WeChat and the WhatsApp.
And we can also maybe might as well just now, so because the session's winding down, we can start to we can talk about the upcoming course with well, there's two teachers now because it's sort of broadening out, but some of you may be aware of a course from the Lama Tsongkhapa Institute, or the Istituto Lama Tsongkhapa of Italy, which I'm sorry for any Italian here that I mispronounced it, but anyway, that's a Tibetan name, so we should pronounce it like Tibetans. Lama Tsongkhapa. So so that university or institution has developed a very complete debate and logic program that goes through in 3 years the full introductory logic, psychology, and sort of cognitive science material that is taught in the traditional, introductory lessons of any monastic education, which ranges depending on institution from 1 to 3 years in those monasteries traditionally. All in English, and also I believe in Italian and maybe even in Spanish. Is that? Don't remember all the
As far as
languages.
I know, it's just the Italian and the English.
Just Italian and English? Sorry, okay. Sorry. Just Italian and English. But that means that for people who are, and so Atisha Matur is and so some of you actually are from that class, so you obviously know it and probably have told other students about it. But just to reiterate, Atisha Matur is a very dear friend of mine. He's a great mentor of mine when I first arrived at the the IBD in Dharamsala, and he was, much more advanced student and extremely studious and kind person. And so he is the main teacher for that program. But now, because there's actually, like what do you call it? Different batches going through. So there's concurrent courses going on, right? So there's currently a group already in the 3rd year, going into the 3rd year. Then there's a group going into the 2nd year, and now another new group of the 1st year. So there's 3 concurrent classes. So there's a new teacher that is I think Venerable Kunsao, I believe is her name, or Kunsang.
Kunsang.
Kunsang. Thank you. And so anyway, this is for people who really want to learn not just how to debate more and to continue practicing debate, but who really want to also learn this sort of essential Buddhist psychology, cognitive science, and philosophical concepts that are the basis for all of Buddhist thought in the Nalanda tradition. The absolute fundamental basis. If you want to understand emptiness as taught by the Nalanda masters, if you want to understand what Dharmakirti was talking about, what Vasubandhu was talking about, what the Prajnaparamita literature is all about, you have to absolutely, no doubt, study this material. So, so that is coming up starting mid-February. I don't know if the exact date has been determined, but we will post the links to their website with all the information you need. And so just the perfect transition for people who have the will and the ability to arrange it in your life. It's not extremely, like, it's not like every day, all day. It's very manageable, I think, for people who are also working. So definitely consider that if you're interested in not just debate, but also Buddhist psychology and philosophy. Okay. Anything else about that course that we want to add?
I'm doing that course, and Atisha is an amazing teacher, and I love it.
Yes, that's right. You're doing that course.
That's what I
Good
wanted.
point. Thank you. And then
Thumbs up.
thumbs up. And then Shubangi has written that it starts in the first week of February. So Atisha told me it's second week, but maybe it's like there's like a preview period or something that students can come for like the first few classes to see if they want to join it. That might be why it's actually like starts in the first week of February, but doesn't formally maybe fully begin until the second week of February or so. But go on the website that we'll send the link to in the WhatsApp group, and that will become clearer to you. Oh, okay, cool. So that's that. And then why don't we just go ahead and, because I mean, we have other things we want to debate and kind of give more, we obviously we haven't set aside time in this session for you guys to all go out and practice because we wanted more review and Q&A. The fact that there weren't that many questions, I'm not sure if that's a good sign or a neutral sign or maybe a bad sign, but anyway, it's just what happened. So we set aside a lot more time for questions than we needed. But so that's why we're pulling in some of the things that we wanted to, talk about in the very last session, next session. But then next session we'll have more time for everyone to practice, do more practice, and actually debate with each other. But might as well just discuss, and again, we can put more like announcements formally in the WhatsApp group, but to discuss it here, what we intend to do for the sake of everyone who wishes to continue debating. So what is it that we intend to do? And this has been a question that's come up a few times. Will there be any kind of future courses or continued courses? So the current plan, and it really depends on student interest and dedication, is to have twice weekly open debate sessions right here in GatherTown, Sarah J. Virtual Monastery, where we'll have debate coaches present, and we can continue working, have as the topics for the debate, continue working through all the material that you've been given during these 5 days, at least to start. And if it really, and it can evolve from there. And we can do more, a little bit more explanation about some of the content in this, in what we've given you and in the basic outline of matter in the physical universe, so that you have more, like we showed just now with Venerable Droma, how you can really debate, how you can really debate this content and kind of dive into these juicier questions. So what if I don't know, should we just tell everyone the times of those and see how many people, okay, Mercari, so we'll see how many people. I think everyone can read what was typed into the chat, so I don't need to repeat it. So thank you, Mercurio, for that comment. So the timing is Thursdays at 7. Better double check it because I don't want to tell you the wrong time. Where is that? I think I put it here. Okay, so we have every. Oh, no, it's not even written. Does anyone remember the timing? Because it's well. Why don't we just type it into the WhatsApp group, because it's different time zones, so it's a little confusing. But basically, I know the Eastern time is Thursdays is I think 8:30 a.m. and Saturdays at 10 a.m. So that way we have an option for a weekend option and a during the week option. And so why don't we just kind of get a show of hands briefly to see, if everyone can put their hand down for now, so we can. I just want to see, like, if it's clear that there's no one who would come on a Thursday, then we can just off the bat cancel that day, right? There's no reason to start it if no one's going to come. So why don't we have a show of hands? Who would like to come on a Thursday? So it's 7 p.m. IST, Indian time, 1 p.m. CET, Europe, Germany, Europe, Italy, and then I think 7 or 8:30 a.m. in the Eastern time zone of the United States. How many people would be interested to come on a weekly basis, or as much as you could? Okay, we have at least a few on a Thursday. And then the Saturday timing is a little bit late for the Indian time zone, but it's 10 a.m. Eastern time, and I think that ends up making it 8:30 p.m. For the Indian time zone, and then that would be what is that? 2:30 p.m. for the CET, European time zone. So how many people would be interested in going to a session like that on a Saturday? And again, I'm not saying like you would have to come to both necessarily, but just to know that there would be a few people. Okay, cool. And so,
Donio,
yes.
what do you think of the idea to have a debriefing email after this week, where we can include the times again for the people who might not be able to have joined this session, so we can so people don't need to stress out and scribble down numbers
No,
and
no, no.
try to
Yeah,
convert into
we'll
time zones.
definitely send out messages with these times again. We're just trying to get a sense. I mean, quite frankly, if there was no, if it was clear there was no interest, then we could just say, okay, let's cancel that day right now, right? It's easiest to do it rather than because to plan it, we have to request the coaches who have been extremely, extremely kind in spending their time with us over the week. We have to request them to schedule in time to come to these sessions, and they're all extremely, very busy, as most of them are, in intensive study programs, or all of them are either in intensive study programs or a combination of study and working and so forth. So then, or like Geshe teaching extremely intensive study programs. So that means that we have now it's clear that okay, so we can request the coaches to come to those sessions, and it will be worthwhile for them and for you. Okay, cool. So just double checking if there are any questions, and then we will certainly send out those dates and times in a written form on WhatsApp, and then probably also in even an email, one final email. We haven't been using email much, but that's good to do because there's a lot of people who actually were signed up but weren't able to attend the live sessions here, so they would also like to know. Okay, so we can discuss possibility of other days. Someone asked, so that we can discuss that later. Any other comments or
there was a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe we can just race through those before.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I apologize for not having a breakout session here, but we've just got so much to get through. So one of the questions was, Mercurio asked, can we copy any sections of the text in the reading room? I would request that you don't. Most of them we're using by fair use, which means that it's just for reading. But if you're interested in those books, then I invite you to pursue them. Some of them are online as well. Some, especially the videos and things, are on YouTube, and some of them are also free online. The next question: will there be an access to gather room? That's what Neuron asked. I presume that means will Gather Town stay open? So that's a question, I guess, for Stefan. We will keep the other town open, right?
I think we haven't talked about it explicitly, but Donio, did you intend to keep it as last year, or did you have any
Right.
other
So that
intentions?
it's just kind of the structure of the app and of this environment is like there's a cost associated with having a certain number of people present in the space, in the virtual space. But if it's under a certain number, then there's no longer a cost. So when we have like a bigger course like this with, I mean, I think the first day we had like 80 people altogether, and it kind of has, been a steady at about 50. So, you know, that's a cost associated with that. If we see when we go and do the practice sessions, is there going to be this many people coming to any one practice session? We'll have to see. But essentially, we'd have to, plan out more. If we get that big number, which I doubt, right? I assuming it would be a smaller number of people, but we'll see. That would be cool if everyone comes. I encourage it. So we'll see. But then we'd have to really plan more specifically what, we can't just keep it open for anyone to come, because we'd have to, only have specific days that we could pay for ahead of time to reserve the space for a larger number of people. If it's under a certain amount, I think that number is 25. Is that right, Stefan?
Yes, that's correct. I think one way to put it is if we would get a lot of interest, we would make dedicated events and schedule the space for those times. But if for any other times, if the number of people stays below 25, there isn't any issue.
Yeah, so essentially that's right. So if the number of people is under 25, then you're welcome to come and just make your own time to come and meet with someone, and that should be able to stay open for that. That's right. Now, I would say that we're not going to just like make it completely public and put the link to this on the debate school website, because then well, who knows what could happen if people have negative intentions and come, or just then it could get out of hand, right? So we do, I mean, to be frank, there may be other groups of people who are studying debate in other contexts or schools or whatever, are on their own, and they may want to, they may see, oh wow, there's this like interactive online space we could go debate in that's all set up for it with these little circles and everything like that. They may want to come. That's totally fine. We just, so if you have friends like that, I'm saying if you have any contact who might, want to use this space for debating who hasn't been part of this program, that's fine. Just let us know though. Don't just like haphazardly send out the link to anyone who says, oh, can I come to an online, virtual debating ground? And, so please do be aware that we're open to allowing other people who haven't been in this course to use the space, but please just be in touch with us about that so we can arrange properly for how to do that.
Right, and to add to that, maybe you've heard reports about Zoom bombing, which became a thing last year, and that means people just show up at some random Zoom meetings that are not invited and do things that interrupt the flow of the whole meeting, and everybody suffers from that because the meeting cannot go on. And that usually happens when people start posting the link to the Zoom meeting and access details, username, password, or something like this online publicly. And that's a bit of a problem. And we want to stay open and inclusive, but we also don't want to expose ourselves. We want to keep this a nice area where people can feel comfortable. So it's please share mindfully and just let us know. That's the basic idea.
And is there anything else? Because I did notice now the session's time is up.
Sure, there's a couple more, but maybe we'll wait until the next one. I know Andres has got a question and Coralie has got a question. We recognize your questions, we see them, and maybe we can answer them in the next go round.
Yes, so last session we'll do the last exercise that was posted in the WhatsApp group, and we will also demonstrate a little bit of what we want you to do in that exercise. So we'll have more debate practice and a few final closing and closing the course out. So please have a nice break, and we will see you shortly.